Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. We're going to get started in a couple of seconds. We got 4 folks joined so far. I give everybody else 30 seconds and then we're going to get going. Maybe less than 30 seconds. All right, Frank, you want to share the, yeah, awesome. All right, let's get going. And if more people roll in, they do. Welcome and thank you all for joining wherever you are in the world. Today's webinar is going to be talking about the launch of CoderPad projects and a lot about real world hiring. And we're going to be spending some time with one of our customers talking about real customer results. Just as you can go to the next slide, Frank. Just as a reminder, someone will be monitoring chat the whole time, whether it's me, Frank, or Adona. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in. This webinar is being recorded, so if you want to review it after the fact, if you want to share it with a colleague, it's all being recorded. All of the attendees' cameras and mics are off, so if you do have any questions, feel free to dump them in chat. And like I said, if you have any questions throughout any of the webinar, feel free to dump those into chat, and we will either answer them as we have natural pauses in the content, or we will take them at the end. But anytime you want to ask questions, please feel free to do so. Next slide, Frank. Here are the folks that you're going to be seeing today. So Alyssa, Frank, and myself. Alyssa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, good morning, or I guess good afternoon, good evening to anyone else in the world. But Alyssa, Director of Engineering at Solace Health.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Frank. I lead the product team here at CoderPad. Nathan.
And my name is Nathan. I am responsible for all things engineering here at CoderPad. And let's get going. Go to the next slide. All right, so here are the things we're going to be covering today. Really, with all of the rise in all of the things AI over the last year and a half, things have changed pretty dramatically in hiring. Also, lots of challenges before that. So we're going to be covering a lot of that today. So we're going to be talking about why sort of the traditional methods for hiring are either failing or don't work well, and some solutions to that. We're going to talk about CoderPad projects, which is something we launched a couple of years ago. Then we're going to be talking about one of our customers, Solace Health, the story, their story and how they're using projects and some of their hiring. We'll also be talking about what's available now in projects, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. We will cover probably some of the questions throughout, but we'll make sure we cover all the questions by the end. You can go ahead and do the next slide, Frank. And the next slide after that. So what are the big concerns with hiring today? There's a variety of them, having hired 1 billion engineers at this point personally. One of the biggest concerns is really candidate integrity. And this is both if you're doing asynchronous hiring or synchronous hiring, how are you sure that a candidate is being open and honest with how they're actually solving the prompts that you're giving them? And really the question you're trying to answer when you're hiring an engineer is, how do I know that this person is a good fit for the problems that we have in the business today? And so the other side of that is, how do I know the candidate isn't, cheating their way through the assessments, so that when they show up on day one, I'm not surprised that they don't know anything. The skills in the world are changing dramatically. This isn't a new thing for developers with AI at all in any way. The tool sets, since I've been around, have changed dramatically every couple of years. And so, especially with the AI stuff, I would say, even before all of the AI stuff and adaptive use of LLMs came along, this engineering is a lot less just go into a cave for 8 to 10 hours a day and write code. It's, there's more around problem solving and figuring out how to work with tooling. So how do you assess for those types of things is really the interesting question in interviews. I'm going to be spending a lot of time, we spend a lot of time doing code reviews anyway. Problem decomposition, whether that's taking a very technical problem and decomposing it into parts and figuring out how to build against that, or it's something about like how do I leverage the tools that are available today to me that I don't necessarily have to build to solve these problems. Lots of debugging, that's never going to change. The big one in the last couple of years that's changed is most every company is using some sort of AI tooling. So how do you really assess for proficiency with using those in one shape or way, shape or form? And for customers where it's relevant, how do you assess for the skills to really ship AI focused feature sets? At CoderPad, we've gone from the last 2 years ago, we were shipping nothing with AI to shipping quite a bit of stuff with AI feature sets. So how do you assess for those skills on the job? And then the other concern is really how do you know you have the right structured hiring process to make sure that you're really getting the signal that you need out of the interview process? How do you run a good process? And what does the ideal process look like? From all the way from asynchronous screening all the way down to the last live interview you're going to do with your candidates. And really, I guess, and this is something that's really hard, you don't really know whether your process is working unless it's completely broken. How do you know when it's time to improve your process, and how do you know when it's good? Those are the biggest concerns by far in hiring today. You can go to the next slide, Frank. And so back to the AI stuff. Before, let's just call the line in the sand when ChatGPT went to GM a couple of years ago. Vast majority of developers are writing code from scratch. Yes, I know that there's a whole ton of open source software and other types of software that we've used over time, but developers are writing a lot of their code from scratch, not assisted at all. They were solving algorithmic challenges, and those types of problem solving were very, very important. And when you're assessing a candidate, the thing that you wanted to focus on mostly was the low-level technical skills. After the line in the sand, when LLMs became a thing, I would say they're spending a lot of time starting with something either an assistant has generated, or as a starting point, and really figuring out how to integrate that into large existing code bases. And so that's a dramatically different type of skill than just writing everything from scratch. Obviously, a lot more collaboration around decision making and real world problem solving is something they're going to be spending a lot of time on. And as always, system design and trade-off is really, and part of that system design is really how do I use both the assistive coding, like Copilot or Cursor, and how do I figure out how that fits into the system? So there is, I would say, a dramatic shift in the way developers have worked, and therefore there's going to be a dramatic shift in how you need to assess for those skills all the way through the interview process. Frank, I think you are up on slide 8.
Yeah, and so really what this means within an interview process, what we hope to drive and allow you all to do is to test those very real skills. And you can do that by actually using real world challenges, and a lot of where developer interviewing and technical interviewing it's coming out of this world of the past 10 years around algorithmic challenges, whether they were done on a whiteboard or even in a simple coding environment, and a lead code type of environment. And what we have found and what we see is this continued evolution. Those may have been good signal before, but right now, at this moment in time, they aren't reflective of real world skills, of the real skills that devs employ every day on the job. And if anything, they have become less of a test in this age of AI, where quite honestly, these are the things that AI is inherently very good at. And so even on the job, when you need to do something that is algorithmic, you end up asking the AI about the best algorithm to employ to solve a problem, because ultimately that is how these tools were trained, and this is in fact its forte. And humans are then employing their brains doing other things. And so I guess a lot of what we are seeing in the market, and how we see both the evolution of technical interviewing as well as the evolution of our product is shifting, in fact, away from these. We show this GIF or GIF, depending on where you're coming from, every not every webinar, but quite frequently, because I think it is emblematic of the problem here on the market. And so this is one of our developers actually going in and solving a leak coding problem here in a code challenge environment. And you can see all they're doing is going and prompting ChatGPT. They're not even providing things that would go into a very well-structured prompt in terms of the role and the goal or anything like that. All it's saying is to solve this, and a screenshot, and then code is output. The code can be copied and pasted, and it passes all the test cases. And so this is the environment right now where leak code and really data structures and algorithmic problems are not good measures of skill. And so I guess if that's out the window, if the past 10 years of technical interviewing is out the window, of course, I'm sure on your mind is, well, what do we do now? And I think that's really what we're here to talk about. And so again, one of the things that we believe is our guiding light is realism. And realism in terms of what an interview environment is and the questions you ask should reflect what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And so whatever that is, whether it's including AI or whatever the next tool is 10 years from now, that's our guiding light, is to incorporate that within the interview process and allow you to actually measure and test that proficiency or skill. And so effectively what we're asking for and prompting you to do in this interview environment is provide real work to generate real signal and ultimately a better candidate experience, where you're not necessarily asking a candidate to recall something they may have done in a university, 20 years ago or something like that. And so I guess ultimately within these real environments, this is what we mean by CoderPad projects. It's a fully, I like to just give a visual. It's a multi-file full environment where you have everything from a rendering of an application. So you have within our environment a full web app running. You have a client, so a application that you can interact with. You have a server, so you can do all the server side things you might want to ask somebody to do. It's fully customizable. You can install whichever packages you want. And it still has those same components of auto grading and AI enablement. You can see an AI tab on the right there on the screen. And so ultimately these are full environments that allow you to ask those same things that you run across on a daily basis. And so again, our goal here is to make the environment as realistic as possible to get the best signal and to provide the best candidate experience. And so this is what we have put together. And with this, where we wanted to bring Alyssa in and Solace Health is to ask how your experience has been in working through and building out this product. Nathan?
Yeah, so Alyssa, tell us a little bit about Solace Health and you and your team.
Yeah, for sure. So Solace, you can't talk about it without talking about obviously what we're trying to solve. We are trying to bring humanity back to the broken US healthcare system. Now, if you're thinking, wow, that's a Herculean task, you are correct. It is. It is massive. And like any good engineer, in a large of a scope project, you need to break it down into digestible chunks. So how is Solace doing that? We are uh, when we break down digestible chunks, we are matching patients with advocates. And what does that mean? So I'm going to give you an example. Imagine you have a loved one who was just diagnosed with cancer. Um, it's a incredibly emotional time. Like you don't know what to do, like, what appointments you need to see, like what opinions you need to listen to, maybe not listen to. And so we believe your advocate can call your physicians for you, make your appointments, like empathize and listen to you, and literally navigate you through your healthcare journey. This is a real world example. Our CEO, Jeremy's mom, was a radiologist and was diagnosed with cancer. And you're like, if a radiologist can barely navigate our healthcare system, like, kind of like, what hope does every other American have in doing it? So it's incredibly fulfilling. The like patient stories you hear, it gives me goosebumps every single time. So in order to do this incredible task, we need an incredible engineering team. And I think last year our engineering team was at maybe 8 or 9 people, and today we're approaching over 40. And we were looking at CoderPad because we need to build really awesome things and we need fantastic engineers. And in order to have a scalable process, we kind of needed to update our hiring process.
So that's a good segue. What was your process like before you started using projects?
Yeah, so absolutely not scalable at all. So we would send our candidates a link to like a Notion hosted page that had a link to a GitHub, or not a link, but like a zip file of a GitHub repo. And we would basically it was a mini full stack app, um, asking you to make certain improvements, and they would open a pull request, and we would review every single pull request GitHub repo that was submitted to see if they were technically feasible to like move on to the next step. So um, tons and tons of code review.
Um, so what, I think I know the answer to this question already, but what made you interested in signing up for the project's beta?
Yeah, so I mean, as you can imagine, not even just like the inefficiency of that at scale, like you're not going to be reviewing 10,000 GitHub repos every single week. Um, like I like to call it your spidey sense, but when someone submits code, you have the spidey sense of like, I think like 98% of this was potentially generated by AI. You don't actually know, you're just using your gut intuition. And so combined with like the inefficiency, not being scalable, and just, potentially passing people on to the next step that had no idea like actually what they were doing, we needed insight into, like how people actually went about solving the problem.
Well, Frank, you can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So more Alyssa. So in projects, we've got a lot of home-baked projects, but you can also create your own custom questions. Alyssa, how did you come up with it? And sort of the two corollary questions are, what things were you hoping to test? What skills were you hoping to test? And how did what you came up with differ from a standard, data structures and algorithm question?
Yeah. So we actually just modified our GitHub repo directly into the project. So it's basically the same-ish code project that it was outside of CoderPad. It's just now adapted to be in the CoderPad project environment. So again, as I mentioned before, it's a full stack application. We hire senior full stack engineers, and we think that the best way to see if you're, as I like to say, good at the thing is if you can actually like build and improve a full stack application. And so what we're testing is, like how do you interact with like, like the front end and the client, how do you build out your controllers? Like what do you do for your database schemas? Projects enable all of that. So, it felt like a very natural like transition for us. And then I famously hate leak code. I think it's usually for, I would say, the majority of people, an exercise in memorization. I would rather test real world skills as opposed to how great you can memorize as many leak code problems as possible.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Memorization is not a good thing to test for in the hiring process at all. It's how do you solve problems? And then in the project's UI, how was it? You said you basically dumped a GitHub repo in there. How was the UI, and did you have any real issues? And what really stood out to you about going from your repo to the project's UI, and then to actual content you could ask in an interview?
Yeah. Uh, so the UI is actually really cool. It's if you use VS Code, it feels like you're in VS Code. Um, I when you start up a project, it has like a kind of like starter code in there, and I basically just deleted it all. Took my GitHub my zip file and dragged it and dropped it into the project. I would say the issues that came to mind would actually was just very, very simple, I guess, things of, like I need to hook up my database. We used to use Docker, but that's not neat anymore because like the project is already in a containerized environment. So how do we, like how do I get my like environment variables, things like that. But once I found the how to go about it, I was like, oh, okay, that's actually pretty simple. It was just the starter of how do I do it. Um, and then just like generally getting used to, like new menus and like how do I do this thing, like and I know there's tutorials for it, so it's usually like a novice first splash in the water thing.
Awesome. Frankie, you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, well, I guess before doing so, Alyssa, certainly some of the things you're talking about in terms of anti-leak code, anti-memorization that resonates, and we appreciate that. Even I guess looking at how you came up with your original exercise that you're sending in a zip file, and understand the burden that places on candidates of needing to download it, set up an environment, get the environment up and running, and that's a whole ordeal in and of itself. It sounds, the painful nature of starting a new job, but with every single now exercise that you're going to run. Um, I guess how did you? Well, one of the questions that we often get is, what should we be asking? And so, even just looking at originally when you came up with that, how did you approach that? How did you come up with that original full stack application, or think through what to test?
Yeah. Um, so say spilling the beans a little bit, but our project is again, as I mentioned, healthcare advocacy. Our prompt is like a very, very poorly coded advocate table that is using all fake data, and it's a Next app using Drizzle and a Postgres database. And we basically are like, hey, this table is barely functional. It's using fake data. Like, make it scalable so that millions of people could potentially interact with this table and like showcase some of your design skills. Like this table is horribly ugly, like fix it. And there's some ambiguity behind some of that, but the original reason there is that kind of ambiguity is because in the world of AI, the more precise your prompt is, the better probably the output is going to be and how they solve it. So we would see, like how do they design the advocate table? Like, did they enable the database or are they still using fake data? Um, did they like move the search functionality from the client side to the server? Like, did they add pagination? Like very simple things to just, be like, how did you make this scalable? Like, what was your critical thinking skills of what you decided was a scalable application?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It sounds awfully like, kind of how you describe what Solace does. And so I think a lot of what I'm hearing from you is you took honestly the problems that you were running into day to day and maybe wrote those down and then said, hey, you know what, how can we bring this to life? And I think what I also appreciate or what I'm hearing from your words is some of the underlying skills reflect, again, um, this handover that you might get from a designer or a product manager over to a dev of, we think and believe that there's, this perfect specification. It'll include absolutely everything you could potentially want to run into or build. And, in reality, that would probably look like a book for every single thing that we want go and build. But oftentimes it is upon the developer to kind of make a sense. And as they're building it, you discover issues and, oh yeah, well, in this case, I love just something as simple as paginating it. The specification didn't say that I should make pages out of this, but this table is infinitely long. Maybe it would be a good choice if we didn't have this infinitely load in the browser or have this like completely like where the scroll bar, all been there where the scroll bar is so tiny because I have to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Why not just make pages out of it? That's a little bit of decision, and that's, I think emblematic of a lot of Alyssa and Nathan, what you all run into as engineers and engineering leaders.
Yeah.
Um, now that you've had this out there though in CoderPad, I guess shifting to the results. What's this look like? How can you talk us through a little bit of the back end of this within CoderPad having the grading in there and just kind of speak to what this experience looks like, both in terms of your experience and then, of course, maybe any feedback you've gotten from candidates.
Yeah. Uh, so we're kind of in an interesting spot where we have, multiple pipelines, so multiple requisitions. They're not like the full stack project is not fully online yet. So when I say that as in my vision for our full stack CoderPad requisition would be you send the test to the candidate with our full stack project. They submit it, and then we use that project that they actually submitted in their live coding interview. And we ask them to add enhancements to what code they already submitted. Because in theory, if they're the ones who, did all of these improvements, they already know the code base and they should be able to navigate it. And they should be able to make a suggested enhancement like any good engineer getting a ticket in the day-to-day workflow. So that portion of like copying from the screen portion project to the interview portion is not live yet. But for our senior backend requisition, the it's been very helpful in being able to see like all of the replay, seeing exactly like what kind of like how they navigated through the code base. Again, you have that paper trail now, right? Like you're not guessing, you're not using your spidey sense of like what you think happened behind the scenes, or if it took them the entire weekend, or if they did actually do it in the 2 hour time limit that you suggested that they do it in. You have like actual results. So that portion has been incredibly helpful. And candidates, I mean, I think not to say like most of them probably haven't gone through our prior process and gone through this one. So, there's probably not that good comparison there, but for our specific process, we hear all the time that engineers love that we are using real world examples, and that our hiring process feels like way more natural than any other like hiring process that they've been in. And like they actually feel like more connected to our mission after the interview process, because of like how we kind of like go through each step of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part in terms of candidate experience and then being able to share and show off both the problems you're working on and maybe what it's like to work with you there at Solace. I guess could you explain a little bit more about that for, potentially our less technical audience on how that might differ, and it reflects a little bit of why you even chose a full stack application versus a lead code. Because you could explain a little bit more about how that leads to a good candidate experience.
Yeah. So, uh, besides like throwing out like leak code memorization, I feel like most engineers feel like they're just being like thrown into a meat grinder when you go through those type of things. Um, you get to see like how Solace is thinking about things. Like between like what is an advocate? Like what specialties does an advocate? Like it starts to make you think about like why are you doing the things that you're doing, and like how is it like connected to the mission. I feel like sometimes when you're in a role and like you're just going through like the daily motions, like you're probably not going to be there long term. You want to feel connected, like you spend so much time working on a weekly basis, like uh it feels good to want to be there. So from the very first step of being like, advocates, like how do we like showcase advocates to people? And then, like the next step in our live coding portion where, like one of our senior engineers will code pair with the candidate and say like, hey, you submitted this. Um, you know, uh, how about we add like sorting to the columns so that they can, like sort by first name, last name. Like it continues into the step of like it would be a needed enhancement in the day to day. But it showcases to us like how they think about solving full stack problems, how they critically think through things. Um, and then every kind of like say step after that is uh I don't know, like when you're going through processes, I don't know, it feels usually very just like robotic, and I feel like we actually try and connect with our candidates. um and you know per I think our engineering team, uh I think we've been incredibly successful at it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly earlier on, you shared the powerful mission that Solace is on, in improving healthcare, and I can completely see how within your candidate experience, getting people excited about that and getting people to, again, learning what is an advocate. And this is, potentially a concept or in application and data terms as an object, but this is a real life human. And how can you think through interacting with this human and helping this human? And so I think that's great. And I guess where you're talking about connecting both your asynchronous experience, your take home, with your live experience. And I think you're touching upon a few different things in terms of being able to dive in deeper. But I guess, would you mind maybe putting a little bit more uh, to that in terms of what are the skills you're hoping to surface? I guess I'm hearing a little bit of that, but how are you hoping to draw those out further on in the interview process within your live interviews?
um Yeah, so critical thinking is key, and you know, I like to say that AI can be used to make you more efficient and a, faster engineer, or you can start using it as a crutch. We need to see whether you are using it as a crutch to fulfill like actual huge knowledge gaps, or are you just using it because you know it and it's just making you more efficient? Um, so, we believe in uh, allowing full AI use in our interview process because how do you know unless you see how they use it? Um, and like you said earlier, uh, ha if you when they get hired, the odds of them using AI are incredibly high. So I feel like that would just be like an absolute miss to not analyze how they're using it on a day-to-day basis. So, like seeing how they think about AI, how they use AI, like what are their critical thinking skills? Like when you say like let's call it stupid gotchas, like, hey, we have a database schema and we named this column like payload when the actual column should be called specialties. Like, did you update that? Did you notice that? Did you say like, hey, that's kind of like a poor name for something. I have attention to detail and I'm gonna go fix that. So things like that where we see like in the real world, if you were presented with this code, like what would you do with it? Um, and yeah, so I would say between the AI critical thinking and like their problem solving skills, like skills can be learned. Like not everyone's gonna be an expert in I don't know, Nest.js for Node. Like you can learn all of that, but like do you have the core foundational skills you would need to be a successful engineer?
I love that. It's really getting at the underlying skills that are going to persist no matter what tooling is in place. Nathan likes to talk about, pre-IDE days where people were developing in the terminal, and then how IDEs were a crutch, and then auto corrections a crutch, and now AI is a crutch. But yeah, everything, progress always moves the developer experience forward. But really, the things that do persist, as you're talking about, the problem solving, or even I think what you're also acknowledging is this shift that, honestly, we're seeing in the marketplace of using AI is actually a skill unto itself, and you want to see how somebody is proficient or not. And some, so we're shifting from let's keep AI out of here to actually no, the thing I want to measure is how you use AI, and I think that's a very interesting perspective. Um, I I thank you for kind of tying that all together in a very real life setting and giving a little bit of the gory details, if you will. Um, yeah, ultimately, this is the type of experience that we are trying to bring to life to enable engineering directors, managers such as yourself to be able to ask those real life skills in a you talked about how we have the monitored environment, so you do have an indication with playback what they did, how they approached the problem. We have the auto grading, and ultimately it is a scalable environment where you don't have to worry about environment setups or any burden on the candidate, but also we have certainly other things such as making sure that everyone took the same amount of time and some basic aspects of where you're not necessarily biasing towards the candidate that simply just put more effort in because they had more free time. And so I think that's what we've brought to life with our asynchronous experience. And then, leading into those on-site interviews, I appreciate how you are then using that place to dive in deeper to kind of surface these underlying core skills as you talked about. And, once a developer is somewhat experienced, or rather knows a code base to a certain degree, you do point out, well, it doesn't just end up with one ticket and then that's it. But what improvements can they suggest? And that's where you have a fully functionally, really high quality team where good ideas come from anywhere, and developers do maybe the thing that wasn't asked but is actually critically important. Um, so what's available now? Well, we have all of this available now. In our environment. I think we are further working to Alyssa's point on forming that tighter bridge between the async and live experience. But you can ask these realistic questions across many different technologies, and here we hope you all can get started and shift your interview experience. Again, Alyssa, some of the things you talked about were bringing to life these real experiences through asking real world problems, and getting candidates to really embody and think through what it would be like to work on Solace's engineering team, and through that they get a great experience of collaborating and working on these problems, and you get a firm signal of, hey, what would it be like when this person joins? Well, actually, it's not too different from what you saw during the interview process. Nathan, any last things?
No, just I want to double tap on the last what's available slide. So everything, so those, hopefully if there's some engineers in the audience, everything is built on top of VS Code. So it feels like VS Code, but because it mostly is VS Code. And we hope you do take a look at this. When you do take a look at this, it is familiar because it uses all of the open source technology. We have, of course, customized it pretty dramatically to add some interviewing specific use cases into it, but it literally is VS Code in a fully synchronous, if you want to run it that way, environment. You can obviously use it for asynchronous assessments as well, but just wanted to double tap on that. And then I think last point, wanted to thank everybody for taking the time this morning. Alyssa, thank you for taking the time. Frank, thank you for taking the time. I don't think we had any questions, so let me give a little bit of air before we end this to see if we have any questions from anybody in the audience. Nothing, no. Well, I guess if you want to learn a little bit more about projects, or you want to schedule a demo, feel free to reach out. Webinar is going to be posted. We'll have details and we will follow up after the webinar. And thanks everybody for taking the time this morning.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, guys. Have a good one, everyone.